Hello students, this is part 2 of day 4. Now human heart is a main organ which helps in the transportation of blood. It is a muscular organ, roughly the size of the closed fist, located in our chest cavity. Now it has 4 chambers. The upper part is known as the atrium or left atrium as well as right atrium. The lower part is being divided into 2 parts, that is the left ventricle as well as right ventricle. The ventricles are separated each by a septum which is known as an interventricular septum, as well as between left atrium as well as left ventricle there is a valve which is known as a mitral valve or bicuspid valve, and between right atrium and right ventricle there is a valve which is present, and that is called as a tricuspid valve. Now children, in this slide we will be studying how the function of human heart takes place. Now you can observe in this diagram, this is a diagram of our heart. Upper part, as I already told you, is known as a atrium, or it is a left atrium as well as right atrium. Lower part is known as a ventricles. So this portion of the heart, that is the left atrium, it receives the blood from the lungs, and that is being carried out by the pulmonary vein. As I already told you in the previous class, that pulmonary vein does an opposite function. It carries always oxygenated blood. So the oxygen rich blood from the lungs, it comes to the left atrium, and from left atrium through this valve it passes to the left ventricle, and left ventricle from here it expands and the blood is transferred through this largest artery that is known as the aorta, and it goes to the different parts of the body which carries the oxygen rich blood. Now different parts of the body brings out CO2 rich blood, that is a deoxygenated blood, and this deoxygenated blood comes to the right atrium. You can see in this diagram it comes to this right atrium. It passes through this valve, that is a tricuspid valve, and it comes to the right ventricle. The right ventricle, when it contracts, the blood from here it passes back to the lungs for an oxygenation. These valves, children, bicuspid valve as well as tricuspid valve, ensures that blood does not flow backward when the atria or ventricle contracts. Now, why partition is important in heart? When you see in birds as well as mammals, they have 4-chambered heart, and because of this separation, there is a high efficient supply of oxygen to the body. This is useful in animals that have high energy needs, which constantly use energy to maintain their body temperature. Because twice the blood is flowing into the heart of birds as well as mammals, it is called as double circulation. Now, when you talk about amphibians as well as reptiles, they have 3-chambered heart, 2 auricles as well as 1 ventricle. Animals that do not use energy for this purpose, the body temperature depends on the temperature in the environment. Such animals, they tolerate some mixing of the oxygenated as well as deoxygenated blood. Now in fish, they have 2-chambered heart. The blood is pumped to the gill and it gets oxygenated and it passes directly to the rest of the body. Thus, blood goes only once in the heart in the fish in one cycle, and because of this reason it is called as single circulation. Now there are 2 types of circulation, single circulation as well as double circulation. In single circulation, blood flows only once through the heart during one cycle of passage through the body. But when we talk about double circulation, blood flows twice through the heart during one cycle of passage through the body. In single circulation, as we have seen in the previous slide, it occurs in fishes, And the double circulation examples are birds as well as mammals. Single circulation is less efficient as capillaries slow down the blood flow. Hence, the body receives blood at a low pressure, which decreases the rate of oxygen supply to the cell. But when we talk about double circulation, it is more efficient, children, as the blood flows at higher pressure, especially in birds and mammals. And because of this, it increases the rate of supply of food and oxygen to the cell and also rapid removal of waste from them. Now, what is blood pressure? The force that blood exerts against the wall of a vessel is called as blood pressure. This pressure is much greater in arteries than in veins. The pressure of blood inside the artery during ventricular systole or contraction is called systolic pressure, and the pressure in artery during ventricular diastole, that is relaxation time, is called diastolic pressure. The normal systolic pressure is about 120 mm of mercury and diastolic pressure is 80 mm of mercury. Now, what is lymph? Children, lymph is another type of a fluid which is also known as an interstitial fluid, or it is also known as a tissue fluid. Now, it is an alkaline fluid, and through the pores present in the wall of capillary, some amount of plasma, proteins as well as blood cells, it comes out into the intercellular spaces in the tissue to form a tissue fluid or lymph. And now this lymph, it drains into lymphatic capillaries from the intercellular spaces which joins to form large lymph vessels that finally open into our veins. Lymph carries digested and absorbed fat from intestine and drains excess fluid from extracellular space back into the blood. Now children, in this slide we'll be observing that how transportation in plants takes place. Now as we know that transportation in plants is being conducted by the two vascular tissues or the conducting tissues known as xylem as well as phloem. Now, xylem is responsible for the conduction of water and minerals, and phloem is responsible to take food materials. Now, when we talk about transport of water, xylem tissues, which are made up of vessels and tracheids of the roots, stems and leaves, are interconnected to form a continuous system of water conducting channel reaching all parts of the plant. At the roots, children, cell is in contact with the soil which takes up ions, and this creates a difference in concentration of these ions between the roots as well as soil. Water therefore moves into the root from the soil to eliminate this difference. This means that there is steady movement, continuous movement of water into root xylem, creating a column of water that is steadily pushed upward. As you know that pressure by itself is unlikely to be enough to move water over the height that we commonly see in plants, plants use another strategy, children. They have continuous supply of water and the water is lost through the stomata which is placed in the leaves. Evaporation of water molecules from the cell of the leaf create a suction which pulls water from the xylem cell of the root. The loss of water in the form of water vapor from the aerial part of the plant is known as transpiration. Now, this transpiration helps in the absorption and upward movement of water and minerals dissolved in its root to the leaves. It also helps in temperature regulation. The effect of root pressure in transport of water is more important at night. But during the daytime when stomata are open, the transpiration pull becomes a major force in the movement of water in the xylem. Now when we talk about phloem, children, We know that phloem transport food materials, and not only the food materials, it also helps in transporting the amino acids. Now this transport of soluble products of photosynthesis is called as translocation, and it occurs in the part of the vascular tissues known as phloem. As I already told you that it helps in the transportation of the amino acid also. These substances are specially delivered to the storage organ of roots, fruits, seeds to the growing organ. The translocation of food and other substances take place in the sieve tubes with the help of the adjacent companion cells, which are the elements of the phloem. Transport, as we have seen, the transport in the xylem can be largely explained by the physical force. But when we talk about translocation in the phloem, it is achieved by using energy. Materials like sucrose is transferred into phloem tissue using energy in the form of ATP that we have already seen in a form of adenosine triphosphate. Because of this reason, it increases the osmotic pressure of the tissue, causing water to move into it. This pressure moves the material in the phloem to tissue, which have less pressure. And because of this reason, it allows the phloem to move materials according to the plant needs. Now the next topic is excretion. Now what is excretion? Excretion is a process of removal of waste from our body, and it comprises of following structures. The first one is a kidney, ureter, urinary bladder, as well as urethra. So if you look this diagram, children, you can see a pair of kidneys present. We have a pair of ureter. This is bladder, that is a urinary bladder, as well as urethra. Kidneys are the main organ of the excretory system. Now when you talk about ureter, it is a thin muscular tube which carries urine from the kidney after filtration of the blood to the bladder, that is a urinary bladder. This bladder is a sac-like structure, children, and the smooth muscle layer lines it, and it stores urine in it. Urethra is a tube that arises from the urinary bladder. Its function is to expel the urine outside the body. Children, our kidney filters unwanted substances from the blood and produce urine to excrete them. There are three main steps of the urine formation: glomerular filtration, reabsorption, as well as secretion. And this process ensures that only waste and excess water are removed from the body. Now, when we talk about glomerular filtration, each kidney contains over 1 million tiny structures called as nephrons. Each nephron has a glomerulus as well as cup-shaped Bowman's capsule. And as the blood flows through this glomerulus, blood pressure pushes water and solutes from the capillaries into the capsule through a filtration membrane. This glomerulus filtration begins the formation of urine. Second step is the filtration membrane. Inside the glomerulus, the blood pressure pushes fluid from capillaries into the glomerular capsule through a specialized layer of cells, and this layer of cells are known as filtration membrane, which allows water, small solutes to pass but block the blood cells as well as larger proteins. Those components remain in the bloodstream. The filtrate flow from the glomerulus capsule further into the nephron. The third part is a reabsorption. The glomerulus filter water and smaller solute out of the bloodstream, this resulting in the filtrate which contains waste, but also some important substances are there which are being reabsorbed, and the substances are essential oils, glucose, amino acids, and smaller proteins which are being reabsorbed. It flows into the duct in the nephrons called as renal tubule, and as it moves down, it has been reabsorbed through the tube walls of the adjacent capillaries. This reabsorption of the vital nutrients from the filtrate is a next step. Now, filtrate absorbed in the glomerulus flows through the renal tubule when nutrients and water are reabsorbed into the capillaries. At the same time, what happens, children? The waste ions as well as hydrogen ions pass from the capillaries into the renal tubule, and this process is called as secretion. The secreted ion combined with the remaining filtrate and become urine. The urine is being collected into the collecting duct, and from the urinary bladder it comes out from our body. Excretion is the removal of waste from the body. Plants also produce waste products, but very slowly and in very small amount. They do not have any special organs for the removal of their waste product. The waste products of the plant are carbon dioxide, water vapor, and oxygen. While carbon dioxide and water vapor are waste products of respiration, oxygen is the waste product of photosynthesis. These waste products are removed through stomata in the leaves and lenticels in stems and are released into the air. Not only these children, there are plants which gives out exude in a form of resins, gums, latex, as well as oils. And even the plants shed off their parts of the tree, and those are also called as excretory products. Now children, here we are going to discuss some of the very important questions. The first question says differentiate between transportation in plants. Now transportation in plants has been done by the xylem and phloem. Now as we know that xylem is responsible for the conduction of water and minerals, and phloem is responsible for the conduction of the food which has been formed from the process of photosynthesis. Xylem, here transpiration plays a very important role in conduction of water from the root to the various parts of the plant. But when we talk about phloem, the food which is formed by the process of photosynthesis is being translocated to various parts of the plant wherever is being required. The important point of this transportation is that xylem always shows unidirectional movement, but when we talk about transportation in plants that has been done by the phloem, it always shows bidirectional movement. That is, the food product, it goes upward also as well as it goes downward. Now the second question says, what are the different types of blood vessels? Explain their functions. Now there are three kinds of the blood vessels we have already seen. The first one is the arteries, veins, as well as capillaries. Arteries always carry oxygenated blood from heart to various organs of the body. Veins carry de-oxygenated blood from various organs to heart. Capillaries, they exchange materials between blood and surrounding cells. Arteries are always thick-walled. Veins are always thin-walled. Capillaries are thin-walled and extremely narrow tubes or blood vessels which connect arteries to veins. Third question is, what are the materials reabsorbed by kidney? Now there are different types of the materials which are reabsorbed by kidney, such as glucose, amino acids, salt, and major amount of water. Now fourth question children, here is draw well-labeled diagram of human respiratory system, circulatory system, schematic representation showing transport of oxygen as well as carbon dioxide exchange, human excretory system, and nephron structure. So if you have your fair copy, you can draw all these diagrams. Make sure that all your diagrams should be in a proper boundary. All the labeling should be on the right hand side as well as heading should be written, and use pencil for making diagram as well as for labeling. If you don't have your fair copy with you, you can practice this diagram in your rough notebook. Thank you.